Hey, hello. Welcome to the concepts for Unit 1. What we have here is a cheat sheet of sorts. Basically, what I've tried to do is create a compact document that gives you all of the concepts that we'll be using throughout Unit 1 when it comes to building arguments, when you guys are writing your op-eds, but also when it comes to dissecting or breaking down arguments when you guys write your rhetorical analyses. And so I want to speak briefly about these concepts. And I think probably the best way of introducing you to them is to actually see them in action. And to do that, I want to return to this document. And I put this document together because this document gives us two examples of how higher ed wants us to look at argument. In this first example here, the example that comes from the GRE, we can see that they're looking for us to examine argumentation, but more specifically, they want us to look at the logic and the reasoning that's embedded in arguments that are being built. And so in this case here, they're really asking us to concentrate on this column, on the logic and reasoning column. And I'll give you an example of that. If we look here, we can see a couple of things that are interesting. Number one, we can see that in higher ed, they want us to think negatively about skateboarders. I'm kidding. Really what we can see is that they want us to look to dissect the strength of the argument. And so take a look at this one sentence here. It says, many Central Plaza store owners believe that the decrease in their business is due to the number of skateboard users in the plaza. We read that sentence and we can see that that sentence is a claim. Right? So it's one of the claim or the premises that helps establish the overall argument that the author is making. And when we see that claim, the expectation for us should be that there will be some evidence that follows that claim, evidence to support the claim such that we see a strong argument is being established. However, when we read this, the next sentence reads, there has also been a dramatic increase in the amount of litter and vandalism. And this sentence isn't providing evidence for this claim that's being made here. And so we can see a gap, right? We can see how there's a problem in the argument that's being established. And specifically, we can see that they're not providing evidence for a claim. Right? And so that's the thinking that they want us to provide here. They want us to be able to dissect the strength of the argument. And that's different than what other institutions are asking us to look at when we look at arguments in writing. And so I'm going to use an example from San Diego State. Right? Often when you transfer, you'll take a writing assessment exam, and they may ask you something like this. In this particular example, they're asking us to look for the persuasive strategies. And we see this language of persuasive strategy. That language is much different than the logic and reasoning language that we have in this column. The language of persuasive strategies really gets us over here. It gets us to think about the ethos or the character of the speaker or writer. It gets us to think about the pathos or the emotions that are embedded in the writing. And it also gets us to think about the mythos or those cultural myths or narratives or values and beliefs that are embedded in the writing. And so if we take a look at this example, let's just look at that first sentence. This is an excerpt from Obama's speech on race. He says, I am the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. Now, that's a fact, right? If we were to look here, we could say that that is a fact that's potentially being used as evidence. But that's not what we're being asked to do in this example. We're being asked to look at how the language here functions rhetorically or functions persuasively, not necessarily logically, but in other ways. And so if we look over here, right, and we start to think about that language that Obama's used, we could think about how that language connects to values and beliefs of the benefits of a diverse culture. Or we could think about how Obama is starting to create this strong character or this character that's going to appeal to a specific audience. In other words, we're examining this text as an argument, but we're moving beyond just looking at how the evidence works, and we're looking at how other persuasive strategies other than just logical moves, are being used in order to compel or persuade the listener or the reader to buy into the argument that's being made. And so I ask you to take a little, I ask you to take a little bit of time, and I ask you to take a look here and familiarize yourself with some of these concepts, right? The argument of a text, the claims and the premises, the evidence, the way the assumptions work. And I also ask you to take a look at some of the questions that I've put underneath the ethos, pathos, and mythos categories, because these are the concepts that we'll be incorporating as we both build our arguments and as we dissect the arguments that we'll be looking at in this first unit. I've also put up a link that provides more details should you need it. And of course, if you have questions, you can always ask me. Hope this helps. Take care.